Welcome, everybody. My name is Christian Camacho, and I serve as the SAP Leadership Fellow for our Springtide Ambassadors Program, known as SAP. Today, I have three Springtide ambassadors joining for a conversation about their political motivations and questions. We're hosting these conversations in advance for our forthcoming research releasing in 2024 about young people's political engagement and attitudes, and exploring when and why religious and political beliefs intersect with young people. I'm excited for folks to hear from these three Gen Z perspectives from the Springtime Ambassador Program. I'll have each of you introduce yourselves first, starting with Akhil.
Hello, my name is Akhil. I'm 16 years old and I live in California. Something I really enjoy doing in my free time is playing sports with my friends.
Thank you, Akhil. Guillermo?
Hello, my name is Guillermo. I'm 18 years old. I live in Texas, and something I really enjoy doing on my off time is listening to disco music.
Thank you, Guillermo. And Lupita.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lupita. I am 17 years old and I live in California. And something I love to do for fun is dance.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for being here today. And once again, I am Christian. I'm 25 years old and I currently live in Tennessee. And I am a big fan of podcasts and not so long car drives. I'm very excited to facilitate this conversation today. Springtide has allowed me to use my own degree, which is political science, to discuss important topics like this with some of my own community members. All right, guys, so let's jump right into the conversation. I'll start off with a question, and Akhil, if you don't mind starting off with us. The first question for you all is: would you consider yourself a political person? Do politics or political issues interest you?
But since I'm 16, I'm just really starting to get involved in politics and become aware of what's really happening around the world. At this point, I'm not sure that I can consider myself as political or not political. However, I'm certainly starting to become interested in politics after hearing discussions that my family and relatives have about issues that impact my community. And from discussions from school to just following events that I see online, I always try to look for information that broadens my understanding in the political realm.
Yeah, so for me, I definitely completely consider myself a political person as someone who lives in Texas and as someone who lives in the western part of Texas. Obviously, immigration is very, very personal to me. And so, given that, immigration is really, really a close part of me and my family, I mean, politics innately is just what, determines me, who I am, the culture. And so, I would definitely consider myself a political person. I do have an affinity for politics because, kind of like how Akil mentioned, you see kind of like how politics affects your community and your family, and you really sometimes are motivated to do certain things or to address certain injustices that you see or certain wrongs, and so that's something that kind of drives me to become more politically inclined.
I mean, it seems like such a simple question, but in reality, I feel like it's not that easy to answer if you actually think about it. I mean, I would like to say I'm politically conscious and politically involved. However, I feel like that doesn't necessarily qualify to me to be considered a quote unquote political person in the sense that I understand that my whole life does not revolve around politics. I don't talk about politics 24/7 with friends and family. In fact, in some instances, I try to refrain from talking about politics because I understand that sometimes it will cause some issues or it will cause some arguments or it will cause disagreements. And that doesn't mean that I don't like talking about politics. Absolutely not. I love to talk about politics, but I do have to understand when and where politics is appropriate to discuss. And being that occasionally I try to refrain from discussing such subjects, I feel like that doesn't allow me to fully consider myself a political person. However, like I mentioned before, I would say I'm politically conscious.
Thank you guys, and it's nice to hear from the three of you. We have an array of levels of interest within politics itself. So this will be a good conversation. The second question, Lupita, I'm going to have you pick this one up first. Is there any social or political issue that you especially care about? And with that, why is this issue so important to you in particular?
I've been waiting for this question. I actually, when I heard about this, I was like, okay, perfect. Like this is right up my alley. In fact, I'll give a little background. At my school, they made us do a project choosing a political issue to write about, and it was right up my alley. And Guillermo actually touched about this, and it's immigration. If you know me, I have said it before, and I will continue to say it again. The separation and forced deportation of immigrants under the pretense of racial profiling is not only immoral, but frankly, it's unconstitutional. I mean, how can you say that you're upholding the law and protecting our freedom whilst also disregarding what democracy is supposed to stand for? Frankly, it's incredibly hypocritical. And I'm only 17. And if I'm saying this about adults who are supposed to be protecting our people, I mean, it says a lot about the state of our politics. And quite frankly, if you actually take the chance to really do your research on what they're putting these children through, it's absolutely horrendous. I mean, the conditions that they're putting these children into these detention centers, they're cages. It's a life meant for dogs. Actually, I take that back. Dogs get better treatment here in the US with the animal rights activism than these children do. And that's the hard truth. It's so unfair. I mean, I'm the daughter of an immigrant. My mother actually came here illegally and was separated from her parents for over a year because they kept sending my grandparents back to Mexico. And it was very hard for her to live with family members that she had never met before. And not to mention the amount of mistreatment she got because she wasn't American enough. It's really unfair, especially with children, what they put the children through. It's wrong, it's immoral, and frankly, it's swept under the rug. I mean, the only time that this issue really had a spotlight was when it was quote unquote relevant. But these children, there are still so many that are separated from their families, and deportation is still occurring right now, and it's unfair, and it really needs to be addressed in a way that actually allows these people to seek refuge in a country that's supposed to be welcoming for all. And that's something that I'm incredibly passionate about. It's something that once I'm older, I really hope to take action on. And frankly, if you're in politics and you're listening, take action for it, please. These children deserve better.
Yes, thank you, Lupita. Akhil?
I think environmental sustainability and climate change are topics that are really close to my heart. People say that often it's a problem for future generations, but I really disagree. And similar to Lupita, I've done lots of research and reading regarding the effect of pollution and plastic contamination of the ocean, both inside of school and outside of school. And I've been really involved with initiatives that are trying to really address climate change in my community. So I feel a sense of urgency for young people like me to be actively involved in these issues and speak up and raise awareness for these issues. Even though you might think that it only affect us from 10, 20, 30 years from now, it really is something that should be addressed right now, especially by young people. So take action.
I just want to say I'm super impressed and proud of being part of this cohort and being part of SAP, because I think we're able to bring in so many young minds that are just incredibly passionate. Lupita just absolutely hit it on the nail with one of my topics that I'm super passionate about. I also come from a mixed status family. My parents obviously, overstayed their visa due to cartel violence a couple years back. And similar to Akhil, I'm also super passionate about environmentalism. And, living in Texas, I've had, the privilege of being a part of initiatives that actually kind of allow you to understand your privilege and help you go visit, I mean, truthfully, oppressed areas. And so, kind of building off of Lupita's passion and Akhil's passion, for me, I've kind of seen how, although I'm passionate about immigration, I truly realize how even just being passionate about one thing allows you to be passionate about a whole array of things. And this year especially, I've been able to kind of discern that, like, I think the term is intersectionality. And so Lupita obviously was super passionate and articulated so well what I feel about immigration. And it wasn't until I realized and visited the border wall that I saw, similar sentiments to what Akhil expressed, of communities on both sides of the border, people who live in what's called colonias in certain parts of Texas and Juarez that are just absolutely, affected due to the actual barrier that disallows for um, I mean, the border wall is in essence like a weapon, right? And it's a weapon for both people that kills people in some ways and simultaneously affects wildlife. I mean, I'm sure via social media and other platforms, and there's myriad of organizations that showcase just how awful the border wall affects both people and animals. And so I would say, obviously, I'm passionate very much so about immigration, but via that passion, I'm able to discover like an array of other passions and other things that I think should be changed. And so, again, like Keelan and Lupita said, if you're a person in Congress, a person with power and privilege, do something.
Thank you all for that. And I know it's kind of hard to ask you to pick one thing in particular. Guillermo, you brought up a good point. Everything is intersects with each other. So thank you guys for that. And Guillermo, I'm going to have you pick up the next question. Do you think it's important for people in our society to be politically engaged or not? And I feel like you're going to kind of say the same thing you had just said, but please speak.
I mean, yeah, wholeheartedly. I think if you are not politically inclined, politics is going to affect you in many negative ways. I think, just being assertive, like, I mean, I allude to more like just like going to school and kind of like fending for yourself, right? I mean, the world unfortunately has a lot of hierarchies that are really unfair. And so once you kind of understand the fact that you have a voice, that you have a way of articulating yourself and a way of seeing the world and seeing that it's bad and understanding just how much power you wield, especially with other people, I think that's when you fully understand the fact that you need to be politically inclined in order to deal with the world and deal with the way that it's affecting you and your family and other people who, you cherish and that you want to see succeed. And so I guess my short answer is yes, I absolutely believe people of all ages, especially the youth, need to be politically inclined and politically well read, especially. I mean, literacy, especially news and media literacy, is something that unfortunately is very much down. But I will say, maybe we'll touch upon this later with regards to, I mean, politics in general. I think social media has definitely played a pivotal role in kind of like helping young people maybe discern more so of what they feel with regards to politics and their political inclinations, and they don't necessarily have to, go via um, like news medias that are considered like legacy medias and whatnot. You know what I mean? So overall, I would say you absolutely need to be politically inclined if you're young.
Thank you, Guillermo. Akil.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think especially for people, for young people, like Guillermo said, political and engagement is important to participate in elections and exercise our right to vote on a wide variety of issues and decisions. And these have an impact on our everyday life, so it's critical for people to pay attention, even if you're not involved in politics. And I think politics is really the main part of keeping a democracy, and it goes much beyond just voting in elections. It goes to advocacy, organization, and civil rights. And political engagement is really powerful for people, especially in this day and age, sorry, people with marginalized voices to advocate for their social justice. And historically advancing civil rights and environmental protections and other progressive causes have played a pivotal role. So I think it's really important, especially in this day and age, to be politically active.
I mean, they said it absolutely phenomenally. I mean, they really encompassed everything, but like they both said, I mean, it's so important that you stay politically engaged. I mean, politics really impacts our life more than we like to acknowledge, to the point that it's really hard to separate ourselves from politics. I mean, everything is so interconnected, everything intersects, and unfortunately, there is a tie all back to politics. I mean, we got to stay engaged for the sake of our own community, but also ourselves too. I mean, like I was saying before, like a lot of different communities that have been affected by politics may be relevant for a period of time, but eventually they're swept under the rug and their voices, first of all, were never heard to begin with, but without our engagement, they're not going to be heard again. I mean, at one point, it's just like you got to understand that without your engagement, you are also contributing to the fact that some people are not going to get the help that they need. And it's a sad reality, but we all have a civic duty to participate in one way or another. I mean, I'm part of my school's League of Young Women Voters, so we are all about voter advocacy. We do registration drives. So for us in California, if you're 16, you can pre-register to vote, and if you're 18, you can register to vote. So it's really important that we make sure that everybody takes that chance to vote, especially like women weren't able to vote before. So now we're really taking the opportunity to make sure that we get our votes in. And without our vote, I mean, we're not heard. And frankly, sometimes voting is the only way to really make ourselves heard. And without any form of engagement, we're actively contributing to our own silencing. So it's important that you make your voice known. It's important that you make your opinions known, no matter how many times people will say that you're too opinionated or that you're speaking too much on something you don't know enough about, or who's to say that your engagement is really going to make a change? It does. It does. Because if everybody believes that their voice isn't going to impact the world, then no one's going to talk. And then there really is no impact. So stay engaged, stay active, and take action.
Yes, awesome. Thank you guys for that. That's I hope those who are hearing this are understanding that, this next generation of leaders is expecting a lot of engagement. So that's something definitely promising for the future. All right, I'm gonna throw the next question at you guys, and I'm gonna start with Akhil, but please pick up right after Akhil, Guillermo and Lupita. But Akhil, who or what do you think has been the greatest influence on you personally, politically?
Well, looking at my limited experience with politics so far, I feel that there's been a couple significant influences, yet not much. One of the ones that has really been important to shaping how I view politics is when I joined hands with other young teens in my community to oppose a Senate bill in California that unfairly targeted people in my faith. So basically, I participated in a video public service announcement project that was shared with elected leaders to point out what was wrong with the bill and how it targeted people like me. And this was really fulfilling because the governor of California actually ultimately vetoed my bill, which reassured me that young people can create change and my voice does matter. And another thing, another influence that really shaped how I view politics has been my family. Growing up every day at the dinner table, I witnessed their commitment to social justice and community involvement with conversations that revolved about like anything you can think of, current events, past events. And that really, although I didn't understand it at first, it still gave me exposure to their viewpoints, and this really has encouraged me and shaped me to be who I am today, always looking to develop my knowledge from a political standpoint.
Yeah, so similar to Akil, I have a lot of people and things that have influenced me in my politics. Namely, eh, I mean, first and foremost, my family, especially my mother. She's someone who I converse with politics. I mean, day to day. especially with Texan politics and immigration. It's very, very heated right now. There's, the Supreme Court has ruled against SB4, which is a bill that would literally allow for cops to uh, ask my parents when I'm driving them around, like, where are your papers, and then be able to deport them. So, in essence, like, my mother and especially my family is someone who has really, really affected me and my politics. Aside from that, I mean, I have the privilege of being able to read and to really discern a lot of authors who I think have also really helped me politically discern where I stand. Um, I want to hone it down to at least three people. I would say, first and foremost, Malcolm X is someone who truthfully has just, I mean, I really, really want to reread that book again because there's just so much that you can discern from each page and each chapter. Secondly, I would say James Baldwin because he also kind of really uses spirituality and molds it with like political action, which I found to be super commendable. And then, I mean, I guess I would say all three. Dorothy Day is another person who, within the Catholic circle, I mean, truthfully, this whole year I've found it kind of difficult to kind of mold my spirituality with regards to Catholicism. But after reading Dorothy Day and even Malcolm X and all three in general, I think I've been able to discern that like there is once again like a intersectionality between being spiritual and having an affinity for politics. And Dorothy Day, especially being Catholic and not having given up her, you know, anarchistic ideals, which to some people in dogmatic circles within the Catholic Church is just like, oh my gosh, has been like really, really commendable. And I honestly would have loved to have met that woman. But in essence, I would say, my mother first and foremost, and then those three authors, Dorothy Day, Malcolm X, and James Baldwin have been super, super formative for me.
Definitely similar to what they both have said earlier. My family, especially my parents, have been a very big impact on me. Ever since I was young, they were very much instilling values of, be nice to other people, make sure, sharing is caring. And obviously, as I grew older, those values went from, being nice and sharing to ensuring that everybody has justice, making sure that you are creating spaces of equality, inclusion, and equity. And now it's been to the point that these values are almost second nature for me. And it's all because of the fact that they really instilled these values ever since I was young. And some people have called me impressionable. I've been told that like my opinions are too strong and that my parents are influencing too much, when in reality, the most that they have influenced me is that it's important that not only do I do my research and what I'm passionate about, but also that I stay true to what I believe in. I stay true to my opinions. And I have found that a lot of what I stand for is all rooted in making sure that we all have a just society. And kind of similar to what Guillermo said, there are a lot of different social activists that I have really connected to, especially those in the Chicano movement that has been really influential to me. I mean, everything like that they have done has just it's not only allowed me, but it's allowed everybody that carries on that legacy to actually be here. I mean, we wouldn't be where we are. I know it's such a cliche line, but we really would not be in the position that we are if it really weren't for them doing everything that they did. I mean, enduring not only prejudice that's verbal, but physical violence, all for the sake of equality. And although, yeah, I mean, none of us want to actually go and get hurt. None of us want to actually like do things that will obviously hurt us. I mean, it's really important that we still uphold that legacy of making sure that we have the strength to speak up. And kind of tying it all back, my parents have always told me, I can't cuss on here, but they have always told me to be strong-willed and strong-minded and to basically not take anything from anybody. Obviously, when I was younger, they definitely modified that, but as I've gone older, even my mom literally called me right before I went on this meeting. She's like, Lupita, if you're going to do politics, you're going to be talking about politics. There's going to be some strong opinions there. People are going to agree with you. People might disagree with you, whether that be in the meeting or after it's been uploaded. But you got to remember, you got to stay true to yourself. And I told her, I was like, see, mommy, that's what I'll do. But at the end of the day, like, it goes to show how influential they are. It's just like a lot of the values that they have given me is to obviously do what is right, do what is just, make sure that our morals are inclusive to everybody and everyone's experiences, but at the same time, like you got to stay true to yourself. You got to defend yourself. I mean, if you can't back yourself up, you can't back a movement. You know, that's the truth. Like you can't give love to other people if you don't know how to give love to yourself. You can't necessarily know how to defend others if you don't know how to defend yourself. And that is the greatest influence they've given me. And that has translated to my political engagement. I back my political beliefs. I'm very strong minded. I'm very opinionated. And yes, I do get comments about it. But at the end of the day, if you find that intimidating, then I encourage you to also be very strong minded and very opinionated because at the end of the day, this is your life. You got to live it. And if you can't back your own, you gotta find another way to do it. And I'm very thankful to my parents for giving me that confidence.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for that. And now
If I could just, so
Yeah.
sorry, if I could just quickly interject. I'm so glad Lupita touched upon the Chicano movement because that was something that I totally forgot to mention. And just very, very briefly, the Chicano movement, especially high schoolers within the Chicano movement, historically have been people who have led like the most high school walkouts, which I just want to say to anybody listening, just look up the Chicano movement, especially within high schoolers, and you'll find that like we have a lot of kind of taking up to do after their example. Sorry, very just wanted to say that.
no, thank you for that, Guillermo. And actually, Guillermo, I'm going to have you pick up the next question. Do you think social media has impacted or shaped your political views? Why or why not?
Yes, so I definitely think social media has affected them, especially in recent times. I mentioned earlier that, I mean, as somebody who doesn't necessarily watch the news or cable TV often, as people within my family that are older, um, with, you know, immigration and all other sorts of issues, I definitely use like social media 24/7, especially Instagram, to get updates. I follow a lot of organizations that, truthfully do a really good job at providing people, constituents, just people in general about policies, things that, can affect them and affect their communities. And so I would wholeheartedly say that politics and social media has definitely been something super prominent in my life.
Thank you, Guillermo.
I'm actually going to have a completely different take. This was a very easy question for me. And the answer is no, because I am off the grid. I don't use social media at all. I haven't used it. I think I tried to download it like once, and then literally within the first day, I was like, "Ah, I can't do this. I can't do this." And it first was for just for mental health purposes. I just feel like social media would have really affected my mental health, and frankly, I really cannot. I can't take that. And it has allowed me to kind of focus more on different aspects in my life. But since like I said, I'm off the grid, um, it actually hasn't necessarily impacted my political views because there is nothing really there to feed into my political views. So unlike Guillermo, I remember like my mom will like she'll have the news on at the background, the 11 o'clock news, and I'll be doing my homework and then I'll walk out and then I'll watch a little bit with her and then she'll like give me some updates. I'll go back or my dad will send me different articles, kind of like being like, oh, so you can, keep in the know. And then obviously with the um I guess the group that I'm with for the League of Young Women Voters, I mean, we stay politically active and politically aware because that's what the whole group is about politics. So, although, yeah, I don't use social media, it doesn't necessarily impact my views. I still get my sources from other people around me. So, I would say the people that use social media still talk to me, but me directly interacting with social media, then no.
Awesome. Thank you, Lupita.
Yeah, I really resonate with both Lupita and Guillermo, and I feel like I'm kind of in that middle region. I feel some of the things that Guillermo mentioned, some things Lupita mentioned, both all apply to me. But undoubtedly, social media has played a role in my life in shaping my political views specifically. And for example, on Instagram, many of the accounts I follow do cover trending political news with their own spin on it, which really influences the way that I look at many events. But I believe that on social media, especially, a chance of misinformation is always there, which I only try to follow accounts that are credible, you know, like the CNN, Fox. I try to only stay to those, and I've learned the hard way that not everything on the internet is real, and don't believe everything on the internet. So double checking is always there. But at the same time, social media is not my main source of information on politics. If I want to know something, I really take the initiative to go and find it myself. So really just looking through internet articles and more searching things that I'm really passionate about is where I really gather news from.
Awesome. Thank you guys for that. Um, Lupita, why don't you start the next question for us? Do you think your religion or spirituality shapes or impacts your politics? How so, or why not?
Now that's a hard question. I would say yes and no. I mean, I'm just gonna say it blank, like I'm Catholic, and as many know, sometimes Catholics are often tied to conservative beliefs. However, I consider myself to be a progressive Catholic, meaning I lean towards more progressive values. So, therefore, although I do practice certain Catholic practices, I don't agree with all of them. In fact, my mother, like going back to like, oh, who influences you and your politics? My mother definitely influenced me on this. She actually wrote a book about the good and the bad about Catholic practices. And because of that, like being Catholic and being a more progressive Catholic, it has allowed me to understand how much religion is very subjective, although we don't necessarily want to consider that. At the end of the day, everybody interprets religion in a different way. And that also applies to politics. Everyone interprets politics in different ways. Some people will embrace more sides than others, or some people will disregard certain parts because they don't necessarily identify with it. So, overall, I feel like to an extent, religion does sort of impact my political views, but I think it's more so my morality that's tied to my religious beliefs that really impacts it. And then the rest of it is just flows from there. But it's a difficult question. It's a really difficult thing to navigate. So that's that's what I believe and that's what I practice and that's what's been working for me.
Thanks, Lupita.
When I think about politics, it's usually separate from my religion because of the separation of church and state, as it's oftenly known. However, I noticed that many states, including California, especially California, where I live, many political decisions do have a huge effect on how people practice their faith. My religious beliefs sometimes influence my opinions, and I'm still learning about my faith every day. So while they do influence my opinions, something my opinions as a Hindu, something that we refer to as dharma in my faith, it means that there's a big deal in both small actions and big actions. So therefore, whatever or whomever I'm looking at and their actions, my religious beliefs when it comes to justice and fairness really plays a role in how I view political um stances.
Yeah, so for me, like Lupita said, I mean, spirituality and politics is a very difficult thing to navigate, especially if you're, discerning your faith, and that's certainly where I'm at right now. But for me, as of recently, I think I mean, I also grew up Catholic, and so growing up, and especially when I was younger, I kind of, in many ways, just almost even detested certain, conservative aspects of Catholicism and certain rigid dogmatic practices and beliefs. And it wasn't really up until I would say last year that, thanks to my what we can call advocacy or engagement with immigration and migrants and other just community service projects, and also having the privilege of reading I was able to kind of subscribe to what I refer to what is known as liberation theology. And so one of um, a father that I know, Father Mike Lewis from Texas, really articulates it perfectly. He says that the gospel is total, right? And so, for example, I guess something that really turned me off when I was growing up is, I mean, the Catholic stance on abortion, right? Obviously, as Catholics, we believe that life begins at conception, and obviously, politically, that's a very, very it's something that a lot of conservatives really center on, especially with regards to talking points and getting elected and things of that nature. But then, like I said, when it comes to immigration, that whole kind of pro-life sentiment kind of fizzles out or sizzles out. And that can be really frustrating to me as someone who subscribes to liberation theology and, like I said, believes that the gospel is total. And so for me, I would say, I guess to briefly answer it, that spirituality is very much tied in with my politics and political inclinations, simply because I think if you're going to apply the same set of standards to one aspect of politics, you ought to do it to the other. And but again, that doesn't necessarily mean that I seek to impose my Catholic views or perspectives onto other people, because any Catholic knows that core tenet of Catholic social teaching is not to impose your beliefs onto another person. It's simply, once again, to understand that the gospel is total and that you have to love one another in a way to seek what is liberation from all these forms of oppression, whether it be, patriarchy, misogyny, other forms of dominance that really affect us and hurt us inevitably. And so, once again, to me, spirituality is everything with regards to politics.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Now I'm going to throw a little curveball at you, and Lupita, you're going to get a head start on it. In kind of like an elevator pitch type of response from the three of you, but we'll start with Lupita. If you could tell the world what everyone should know about young people and politics, what would you say?
We're coming to get you in the nicest way possible. We're going full force. We're coming in clutch. We are packing a punch, to be quite honest. I mean, like, look at us. Like, we're all Gen Z, and look at the way that we are talking. To be quite honest, we're speaking more facts than some of the politicians that are supposed to be leading us right now. So the world better know that you got to watch out, because we're going to be turning you upside down, and it'll be a good thing, because we're all politically engaged. We are working to make this place a lot better in all aspects, not just racially or environmentally or in terms of gender, but also finance and our international relations. We are basically attacking it from all sides, understanding that injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere, and we are here to solve it. No matter our age, no matter where we're from, we're here and we're going to fix it.
Thank you, Lupita.
Yeah, really well said by Lupita. I think my important thing is that young people aren't just going to be the leaders of tomorrow. They're really involved today. And I think this meeting, me, Lupita, and Guillermo all do justice to the fact that young people are actively engaged in politics, whether it's social causes or simply sharing how they view politics. Our voices deserve to be heard so we can contribute today and make a difference rather than later when it's too late. We're not just passive observers waiting for their turn to take the lead. We're already driving change and shaping the political landscape more than some of the so-called politicians.
Thank you.
Very well said by both Akhil and Lupita, like always. I mean, for me, I guess to piggyback off of what you both said, I mean, I think we definitely are coming out to get you. Like Lupita said, we do have that fire and passion and desire to just completely reform, if not upend certain things that we just see are completely wrong, that are just completely faulty. And Akhil also mentioned the fact that, we're already showcasing that, we're not just talking about it, we're actually walking the walk. And so for me, if I could tell people, especially younger folk, something, it would be that you're not alone, though. Because for me, kind of like how we touched on, earlier, Lupita did mention the notion that, like, Instagram and all these places, even though for me they serve as a core part of how I engage with people online and with politics and my opinions and how I receive my political news, it's very, very isolating. And society in general, especially in the Western Hemisphere and in the US, is incredibly isolating. I was just in New York and I had never felt like I just felt an insane amount of sonder and loneliness in such a dense place. And it wasn't it wasn't until then that I kind of discerned the fact that, the way that our society is structured it's in a very individualistic way. And so what I would reach out and say to young folk is that there are spaces like SAP, other communities, other places, especially where you can engage in community service and actually find a way to escape that individualistic mindset and find that that is where the change actually happens. Like we can talk about this, online, talk about the ways in which the system isn't working. But again, you can't divulge into kind of a loneliness. You have to really seek out those spaces and seek out that connection in order for you to, one, not feel alone, and simultaneously for you to actually, practice what you preach. And so that's something that I would say to everyone out there is you're not alone.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys.